But I am very excited to see all of you today. I'm very happy to be able to speak to you. We're doing Christmas at the movies, and last week we got to see A Christmas Story. And so this week I'm really excited because I got to choose this one. And this movie is, I feel like it's my spirit animal. This movie really captures the essence of me, and you only ever see it once a year because it's Christmas. You only ever see, but I just feel like this is me throughout the year, throughout every month. Not so much in what he represents, but in how he talks. So if you want to go ahead and play that first video.
You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch. You really are a heel.
You're as cuddly as a cactus, and as charming as an eel, Mr. Grinch.
You're a bad banana with a greasy black peel.
Just face the music, you're a monster, Mr. Grinch. Yes, you are.
Your heart's an empty hole.
Your brain is full of spiders. You got Gallagher's soul, Mr. Grinch. Well, I wouldn't touch you with a
39 and a half foot
I asked for 3/4, not 5/8. Stay focused.
You know, if you ask the who's who of Whoville,
no one's denying. Ow.
Airbag's a little slow. But that's what these tests are for.
you're a vile one.
Mr. Grinch, you have termites in your smile.
You have all that tender sweetness.
I'm a seasick crocodile, Mr. Grinch. Given the choice between you, I'd take the seasick crocodile.
That is my favorite Christmas movie. I don't know about you. If you haven't seen that Christmas movie, it's one of the funniest things that you'll see. He is incredibly sarcastic. He's just mean, but it's Jim Carrey, and I can't ever stop laughing whenever I watch one of his movies. But the reason that I brought that video clip, the reason that I'm doing The Grinch, is because The Grinch had something that not everybody in Whoville had. He had something wrong with him. Can anybody in here tell me what that thing was? Go ahead and yell it out. His heart was 3 sizes too small. Does anybody remember that from yeah? And so his heart was 3 sizes too small. So he had this hate, he had this disdain for Christmas. He just couldn't stand it. He couldn't stand to look at people. He couldn't stand to be around them. He was just. And so because of that, he became really mean. He became really, really mad at everything that happened. And he tried to take things away from people because of that. He tried to steal things away from people. And I feel like this fits perfectly with Christmas because when you read the story of Jesus being born, there is a character who is almost exactly like the Grinch. Not exactly. He's not green and different things like that. But his name is Herod the Great. If you've ever heard of Herod the Great, go ahead. I deal with teenagers all the time, so go ahead and raise your hand anytime I ask a question. Who's heard of Herod the Great? Woo, all right, most of the room. If I start to mess up or something like that, feel free to look at your phone or something like that, because I deal with teenagers most of the time, so if I mess up, it's mostly like they just look down real quick, so it doesn't seem like there's an awkward situation. So if I mess up real bad, everybody needs to look at their phone, okay? All right, everybody in agreement with that? I'll try not to mess up, though. But Herod the Great, he allowed his heart to become smaller. He allowed his heart to become hardened to all of these different things, and it was all because of what led up to in his life, what people said to him, what people did, and he allowed all of these terrible things to really sit and fester in his heart. He didn't care about anybody. He didn't care about anything else but himself. And because of that, he ended up taking a lot of things away from people. He ended up making thousands, and he ended up haunting thousands of people with some of the actions that he made. And so this morning, we're going to talk about this man as he ruled over Judea in the time of Jesus, causing his entire family to flee. So if you have your Bibles with you, that's always a good thing to have. Who's got it on their phones? Who has a paper Bible? OG Bibles, okay. The verses will be up on the screen if you don't have that, but it's only cell phones in youth. I always try to give out prizes anytime a kid brings like a paper Bible, but like half the time it's just their parents' Bible that they stole, and their parents are like, "Where's my Bible at?" Because they forgot it in their backpack like 20 minutes later. So it's always phones. I'm always seeing them light up. It's a great app if you want to get it, but that's just a YouVersion plug for everybody. So Matthew 2, it says, Herod the king, behold, the wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, "Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all of Jerusalem with him. And assembling all of the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where Christ was to be born. So the wise men, as many of you have seen, either through nativity scenes or different things like that, the wise men came to visit Jesus. They came to see this king who was being born, and Herod got to meet these guys. Herod got to see these people right before they were going to see Jesus. And as they were coming up, he got really mad at this moment. He wasn't excited like how most people were. Jesus was being born. He didn't care. He got really mad, and he started asking them all these different questions. Where's he going to be born? What's he going to rule over? Just trying to figure out as much information as he can about how this is going to affect his life. And so you wonder why Herod was mad. You wonder, why would this man be mad? Because Jesus was being, at this point, prophesied for all of their history. All of their history had led up to this moment of Jesus being born. They had been praying, they had been worshiping, they had been waiting for Jesus to be born. And so when Herod was told, "Hey, there's a really cool baby over there, I'm going to go look at it," he wasn't excited for that. He wasn't happy about Jesus going and seeing all of these different things. What he ended up seeing was somebody who was going to take his throne away from him. He saw somebody who was going to take everything he had worked so hard for, everything he had spent his entire life doing. He saw somebody like that was going to take this all away from him. And he thought of this because his counsel told him this prophecy in Matthew. And it'll be on the screen. In Matthew 2:6, it says, "And you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, you are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel." In Herod's mind, he was about to lose his job. He was about to lose everything that he had fought so hard for. He was so mad. He was so angry. He would no longer have command of armies. He would no longer have command of the cities. He would have nothing if this king was going to be born. And when I thought of this, all I could think of is when you have your first kid, and that kid gets to be about 2 or 3 or something like that, or maybe some of you in here, you were the oldest sibling. Anybody in here was the oldest sibling? Some people remember that moment that their parents told them they were no longer going to be the only child. They were going to be the only child. My mom said I was really excited. I was like, oh, I'm going to get a sibling. I wish now that I had been a little bit more skeptical of who they were, just because of how mean they are. I'm just kidding. They're very nice people, my sisters. They're very nice. They continue to remind me of how much better in school they do than I ever did. So that's a fun little competition that I was never made aware of. But they are great. And but a lot of times you see these videos of these kids who are told, you're going to have a baby brother, you're going to have a baby sister, and all of a sudden they're like, how dare you do this to me? Like, these kids are betrayed because you did this to them. These kids are angry, they are furious, they hate you, and it's all because they feel like they're being dethroned. They feel like that all of the love that was coming for me, I either have to share it or I'm going to get none of it. And that's what these kids feel, and that's what Herod did. He had a straight up tantrum right here in this moment. He's like, I don't want to rule with anybody else. I don't want to have another king. Like, he had a full-on man tantrum. And at this point, Herod was like 50. So this was not okay to do. It was not okay for him to sit here and throw a tantrum about some little toddler being born who people were like, that's a cool baby over there. And he's like, no, I'm going to kill it. Like, that's not okay for what he was doing. But he couldn't allow this to happen in his head. He had gone through so many things in his life. He had fought so hard that he couldn't allow for this child to dethrone him. He was just angry. He was just bitter. He said, I can't let this happen. And so when he told the wise men, he said, come back here because I want to worship the child. I want you to tell me where the child is because I want to worship him when you come back. And so the wise men, they go, they visit Jesus, they throw a bunch of presents at him. And after that, they stay with them for a little bit, and during one of their nights while they're sleeping, they all have this dream. They have this dream that God says, do not go back to Herod. Do not go back that way. I'm going to have you leave another way. That could have been the fastest route, but God was like, no, you're taking the scenic route back. It's going to take even longer to get back. But because of that, this baby will be protected. Because of that, this baby will live on to do great things. And so they went a different way. They went a different way, and Herod, he heard about this. And in the last verse that I'm going to read to you, it's going to be still in Matthew 2. It's going to be Matthew 2:16. It says, then Herod, when he saw that he had been tricked by the wise men, became furious, and he sent and killed all of the male children in Bethlehem, in that region, all that were 2 years old or under. According to that time, he ascertained from the wise men. Then he fulfilled the prophecy spoken by Jeremiah. A voice in Ramah will be heard, weeping and loud lamentation. Rachel weeping for her children. She refused to be comforted because her children were no more. When you look at this passage and you're just reading through the Bible, it really seems like this king goes crazy real fast. He goes 0 to 100, and you don't understand how he's just like, these guys didn't come back to my house. Let me kill a bunch of babies. Like, that's really what it seems like, is he makes this gigantic jump. But if you look at Herod's life, if you look a little bit into the history of Herod, you see that there is a lot more to that happening. When you look into the life of Herod, you realize that when he first became king, he thought that his wife was being unfaithful to him. He didn't have any proof. He didn't have any proof at all. He just thought, you cheating on me. You're a cheater. And he executed her. He executed his own wife because he thought she might be cheating on him. 20 years later, the sons that she had for him, he killed the youngest two because he thought that those two were trying to overthrow his throne. He thought that those two kids were going out to other countries, coming back and trying to give intelligence so that they could overthrow their dad, so that their dad wouldn't be king anymore. So he killed his youngest two kids. And then 2 years later, he killed his oldest son. because he thought his son was doing the same exact thing that the younger two brothers were doing. He killed his oldest son. And the thing that's worse about that and kind of shows you where his mind is that same year that he killed his son, a few months later, the wise men show up at his front door. So this is not a jump for Herod. Killing people, hurting people, this is not a jump for him. He's already killed his entire family. He's already gotten rid of everybody who should have loved him, of everybody who was related to him, all because he thought that they hated him. All because he thought that they were trying to take everything away from him. Many things hardened his heart over the years. Many things. But it seems like over the course of that 22 years that it took him to kill his entire family, the same exact thing happened in just a few weeks. The wise men disobeyed his orders. They didn't listen to him. They were running around behind his back, literally. And that's what he thought his wife was doing. He thought his sons were trying to take his throne away from him, and now there's this baby being born. Now there's this baby who they are already calling king. That baby can't even lift his head. How is he going to rule over a nation? But they're calling him king. He had all of these things that were continuously happening. And so he was sorry. Look at your phones. He was no stranger to hurting people. He was no stranger to hurting people who he believed were trying to take everything away from him. And so he went and he ended other families because he had already ended his own. He had to go and take more, and take more. And so Jesus and his family, they were able to get out. They were able to run. They moved to Egypt. But Herod's story, they were told, they said, when Herod is dead, you can return. And in that same year, just a few months later, Herod, as most historians will say, he killed himself. Herod couldn't take being king anymore. He couldn't take who he was anymore. Herod ended it. When his heart had finally shrunk and hardened enough that he couldn't take who he was, is when Jesus was able to come back, is when the new king had to be placed, is when he was no more. And in the story of the Grinch, that same thing happens. The Grinch, he goes and he takes all the presents. He tries to take Christmas away, which is literally what Herod was doing. If he would have killed Jesus, Christmas would not have happened. Herod was literally trying to take Christmas away. The Grinch tried to take Christmas away, but there is a difference that happens in these two stories where Herod continues with his heart shrinking and hardening until he cannot take it anymore. Something else happens with the Grinch, if you want to play that video.
Maybe Christmas. Perhaps. Means a little bit more.
Help me! I'm feeling...
And what happened then? Well, in Whoville they say that the Grinch's small heart grew 3 sizes that day.
So there was a difference that happened there. With Herod, he continued on his path. With Herod, he didn't care anymore. His heart became so hard that he was going to take away everything that people loved. But with the Grinch, something else happened. He kind of realized this path that he was going on. He kind of realized that Christmas was not about him. And when he realized that, as you can see, that's my favorite line, I'm feeling, is he actually felt two things happen right there. He forgave, and then later in the movie, he was forgiven. His heart grew because he forgave everybody in Whoville for what they had done, and then he was forgiven for what he had done to them. We have this idea in our culture that it's okay not to feel. It's okay to kind of push down your feelings. Don't let them see you cry is a phrase that people say a lot. People just seem to shove everything down. And when you do that, your heart begins to shrink. When you do that, your heart begins to harden. When you push down unforgiveness, when you push down feelings, when you say, I don't need these things, your heart begins to shrink and harden. And if we put that idea in any other context, it's really, really weird. For instance, with my three little sisters, sometimes I would go to their doctor's appointments when they had to get shots as babies. Does anybody remember having your child or somebody else's baby have shots? So the doctor would usually have 1 to 3 shots that they would give the baby that day or something like that. And the doctor would say, all right, so I'm going to give the baby these shots, and you're going to stay right over there, and as soon as I'm done, you can run over and you can hug it, you can help it stop crying. So all the parents are just off on the side, like, as soon as this baby starts bawling, I'm there for it. Like, this baby's going to be good. And so all the parents are just setting up. The thing is that with this idea that feeling is not something that we need, that forgiveness, all this is not something that we need. Imagine that baby, 1 shot, doesn't cry. 2 shots, doesn't cry. 3 shots down its arm, it doesn't cry. By the time that parent picks up that baby, they have one of 2 thoughts. My baby is a demon, or my baby is a superhero. Because you're wondering why that baby isn't feeling anything. Why isn't that baby crying? Are you Superman? Like, you're just sitting there wondering why it doesn't feel anything. And so why, as we grow older, is it okay not to feel anything? Why, as we grow older, is it okay to push things down? Why do we have to hold on to unforgiveness? Why do we have to hold on to hurt? Why? Is it okay if we put that in any other context? It is not okay. It is not healthy. And yet we do it day after day after day. So many people in here. What did your heart look like 5 years ago? What did your heart look like 10 years ago? How is the way you acted different from the way you are now? Why is it okay for us to shrink our hearts? Why is it okay for us to harden our hearts to the people around us? What's going to end up happening is you are going to end up being as Herod was, where doing these terrible things is nothing to you because nothing can penetrate your heart. Nothing can go into your heart. Nothing can affect who you are. And so I have 3 questions for everybody in this room. The first one is, what has shrunk your heart? What has shrunk your heart? So many people in here, if you think about who you were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you realize you are a much colder person than you are. You realize you are a much colder person now than you were back then. My second question is, what things in your past still affect your today. A lot of times we shrink our heart and it doesn't affect our day-to-day. But sometimes we try to walk around and something happens and all of a sudden it's there. It's right in the front of your mind. There are things that affect the way you go to your car. There are things that affect the way you talk to your family. There are things that affect everything you do. And my third and final question is, how long can you keep living this way? How much longer can you keep living like this? With a heart that's becoming cold, with a heart that is no longer feeling anything for anybody except yourself. If I could have the band come back. I'm wrapping up now. I only usually preach for like 30 minutes, so it's hard to add 10 minutes on the speeches. But these three questions, I want you to ask yourself some. Because they affect who you are now and they affect who you used to be. They affect everything about your life. Why has your heart shrunk? Why has all of this happened? Why do you hold on to it? There are people in this room who need to forgive and also need to be forgiven. This might not ring true with everybody, but there's some people in this room who they know that their heart is different. They know that they have become colder to people. They know that they have become colder to everything that they experience. Where things that used to bring you joy and happiness, you no longer care about them. When Herod killed his family, I'm certain he didn't think he was going to do that when those boys were born or when he married his wife. But as years went on, he started to grow this hate. As years went on, he started to grow this disdain. And he never did anything about it. He never forgave. He never felt. All he did was he took it in, he shoved it down, and he allowed his heart to shrink. He allowed his mind to become hardened. He allowed himself to hate. In a few minutes, all that I'm asking for this morning is that we stand up and we worship as a church, because we can't be cold. The people who are in this room, we can't have hearts that are smaller. We can't have hearts that are hardened. Because what's going to happen is when people meet us, they're not going to care about the God that you serve. All they're going to see is somebody who is angry, so why would I care about what you say you love so much? Why would I care about that thing that you say you love, but you have not shown love once in the past five years? You have not felt love once in the past 5 years, and it's because we sit here and we allow our hearts to shrink day after day as we hold on to all of this pain. I want so badly for people in this room to be okay with allowing their heart to grow. The thing is that I can definitely tell you, your heart's gonna get hurt again. You're gonna go to help somebody and they're not gonna want it. You're gonna go help somebody, you're gonna be doing things for years and years and years, and all of a sudden they're back in the same place that you found them, and it only took a week, but it took you 5 years to drag them this far. That's going to happen. But the thing is that you cannot allow that to affect you helping somebody else. You cannot allow that to affect the way you treat somebody that you meet later on in life. Because that person may change, and they may change permanently. But because your heart is cold, because your heart is shrunk, you don't even give them a chance. There's so many people in this room who are here because somebody went after them. And that person, I'm sure you can sit here and say, they had the biggest heart for you, and you have no clue why. Whether it was your family, whether it was your parents, whether it was a pastor, somebody went after you with a heart that was open wide. And you felt accepted, you felt loved, you felt forgiven. And it's all because they did not allow the things that happened to shrink and colden their heart. So if everybody in this room will go ahead and stand up with me. Thank you for listening to what I had to say. I'm always excited when I get to talk to people about Jesus, because I know that there are quite a few people who I would not be here without. There are quite a few people who had to have gigantic hearts for this weird kid. You can ask Pastor Kevin later. I was not a cool kid in middle school. I was a weirdo. I twitched. But the thing is that some people, they opened their hearts and they saw this kid who could change and could change permanently, and they gave their all. So some of you might need to come down here as the worship team goes on for a little bit. You might need to come down here and pray and ask to be forgiven. You might need to come down here and pray that your heart and you can forgive others. Go ahead and do that. But what I want everybody in this room to do is I want everybody in this room to be ready to grow your heart so that you can walk out of these doors and change and affect somebody's life who has never experienced a heart as large as yours for them. You have somebody in mind. You have some people in your life who you can absolutely change. Please do not leave this place with your heart still cold, still broken, still hardened towards this world. Allow God to change that so that you can go out and help to change other people's lives. I'm going to pray really quick, and I want us to just go into a short time of worship. If you need to be up here, please be up here. But please change your heart. Please grow your heart. Father, we thank you for this moment. We thank you for allowing us to see and be with you. Change our hearts, change our lives. Allow us to know more of you, God. We so badly need to have you in our hearts. We so badly need to have you grow who we are, God. Thank you for being here with us. Thank you for never closing your heart off to us. We pray that as we leave these walls, that we will grow your kingdom, God. Help us to do all of this. And everybody in this room said, amen.